Hey buddy, it's Peter, and this is going to be a special video because this is a very special and very rare bike. Now, if you're just looking at it, you might say, that's a Hayabusa, which it is. But this is the 25th anniversary Hayabusa. There's only 25 of these in the country, and you could be one of the first ones to buy it. So of course, we're filming here in Canada, 25 of them in Canada. And what I'm gonna do in this review is go over everything that I can in detail so you can have a pretty good idea of what this bike is. I'm even gonna have to use a cheat sheet, which I don't normally like to do, but this bike has a lot. So that's what this is going to be, is an in-depth review. But I may not cover everything you want. So if you wanna know something that I don't cover, that's the awesome thing about filming here at McLean Sports. They give me complete access to their entire vehicle lineup, including this very rare bike. And if you wanna know more, just let me know in the comments section, and I'll make sure I come back to you both in the comments section and in future videos to make sure that we build a video database of all the information that you could possibly want to know. So I want to thank McLean Sports here in New Brunswick. And again, if you want to see this bike in person, it is here right now. You can swing by, you can check it out. You can see a link in the description to connect with McLean Sports. All right, let's talk about what this is and then work our way through it in detail. So being the 25th anniversary version, and we're going to show you up close on this bike a number of details that identify it as that 25th anniversary detail. And the one thing I should point out is where I have my hand right now, there is a cowl that comes with this bike. It's not on it right now. So you get the seat or the cowl, both come with the bike. But being the 25th anniversary, we got to talk a little tiny bit about the history of this bike. So when this bike came out, the idea was it was going to be the ultimate sports bike. Now in the past 25 years, sports bikes have changed a little bit, and for a lot of sport bikes, they're a little bit shorter, a little bit more nimble. This was never designed to be a replacement for Suzuki's GSX-R. Those are race bikes. Those are a little bit different. What this is the monster. This is the drag racing bike. This is the full power bike. Now you can do a lot more. Most motorcycles, when they're very focused and extremely good at one thing, they're not great at a lot of other things. The Hayabusa is interesting because it's still pretty good as a sport tourer. It's still pretty good as a two-up sport bike, and it has a whole bunch of technology to keep you safe with its insane power, and that's part of what we're going to talk about in this video because this bike has evolved a lot in 25 years. But the cool thing about this bike is from the very beginning, it was one of the first bikes to have a sort of a wind tunnel tested bodywork here. So if you're out there wearing your jean jacket from 25 years ago on this thing, you're just doing it wrong. You gotta wear your leathers, you gotta be aerodynamic. But the entire body was designed to be aerodynamic. So that's one thing. Second thing, the engine is phenomenal. We're gonna talk about that in this video. And if you wanna know how phenomenal, just go look up smart cars with a Hayabusa engine on YouTube when you're done with this video, because they don't do smart cars with other engines. If you're gonna hop up a smart car, you use this engine. It's just what you do. It's the engine that you use to hot power anything that's tiny that needs a great engine that's compact and just reliable and fantastic. So that's what this is. So let's dig into some of the details and show you some of the 25th anniversary stuff on this bike as we go through it. We're gonna start at the front, work our way back, and then like I said, if I don't cover some of the technology, we're probably gonna finish with a little bit of boring spec reading translation of technology so you really understand what this bike is. Let's get going at the front. All right, so I always start at the front tire of a motorcycle review because you can tell the manufacturer's intent when you look at the front wheel of this motorcycle. And I think there's some interesting pieces here because let's just start with the tire in this case. You have the, sorry, got a motorbike ripping, got a dirt bike ripping by. All right, let's just start with the tire here. You've got the Bridgestone Battle Axe Hypersport S22s. Now, these are very grippy tires. There's like, I don't want to downplay the grippiness, but these are used on other bikes, I believe, such as something like the Ninja 1000 from Kawasaki's lineup, which is more of a touring bike than a full, like a sport touring bike, than a full-on hypersport bike, even though the tires themselves say hypersport. Now, what's interesting about that is I think it shows that the versatility of this bike. Obviously, these tires are capable of handling absolutely insane speeds. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But you also have something that is capable of being a sport touring type bike. So that's one thing that's interesting to me. Over here, some of these gold accents, those are 2024 anniversary edition accents here. You've got the Brembo brakes. You can see there's the space here in the caliper. There's that little gap there. That's sort of the Brembo, and you can't really see it on video, but that is there. The thing with these Brembo brakes is there's a variety of Brembo brakes. You know, good ones and less good ones. less good Brembos are still usually better than just about everything else out there. So Brembos are a key for a couple things. One, heat dissipation. They are very good at basically staying consistent after hard braking, which means that if you're going fast on this bike and you apply the brakes firmly, you're going to have consistent braking over and over again. And these ones are especially vented well. They talk about that in the ad material for this kind of thing, or the research material that you would have for this. They're also relatively lightweight, and lightweight is a really key piece to a number of pieces in this bike. This bike is not super light overall, but a lot of the components, they focus on lightweight in order to give you the best performance. So of course, lightweight in the brakes, the upside down fork here, upside down fork gives you a less unsprung weight. So right away, you've got to focus on sporting areas. And then you can see that aerodynamics, they almost bury the front wheel into here, and you've got a curved radiator in the back. Now the radiator is actually interesting as well, because in through the back, as I talk about the radiator, it's got, you know, something like 8% better efficiency than the previous generation of, or 8% better cooling than the previous generation of Hayabusa at speed, 7% better than the previous generation at low speeds when the fans are running. But they also have a modified fan speed or fan angle on the fins of the fan to keep you getting too hot on a bike that can get hot because it's a performance engine. All of this is designed to keep you comfortable. So again, while it's designed originally 25 years ago as a pure hyper sport bike, it still has various little things to keep you comfortable and to allow you to use this as an everyday bike, which I think is super cool. All right, let's move on. So I want to focus a little bit higher up on the front here. It's hard to show on camera the width of this bike. Again, it's got a surround, a very large engine, a 1300 plus cc engine. You've got really cool wing mirrors type here that kind of hang down. Again, this whole thing is designed for aerodynamic efficiency. And one of the examples is these daytime running lights off on the side here. When you turn the signal on, they actually turn to your signal light. So well-positioned signal lights versus the headlight. I can flash that proper projector beam headlight down here to give you proper light. But you've got a really smart design here. Not having those extra wing style signal lights allows you to have that aerodynamic efficiency that they were going for from the beginning. Let's see if I can turn that signal off. There we go. And so you've got that. The only thing protruding here is these really unique wing style mirrors that are even the stems here are very specifically designed, sharp cut off, so they have a little spoiler on the back, a lot like you would have on the back of a car. Same thing over here on the wings. Really cool design here. And again, a little bit of a bubble up here, so when you get in a tuck position, you've got your helmet perfectly sort of set into that bubble with a little bit level, up bubble, and then level again here, all for that perfect tuck position, all about aerodynamics. So before we dive into some of the details in here, I'm going to talk about the riding position on this bike because it's interesting. First of all, I think you can see from the side view that you have, this is a long bike. Now that started that way for a couple reasons. First, aerodynamics. It was designed in a wind tunnel. And then of course, also it helps prevent wheelies. Now this bike will help prevent wheelies all on its own. It has some cool tech, which we'll talk about in a second. But overall, you have a long bike. And what that means is a different seating position than you would have on a typical bike. So overall, seating position, a little bit tall, maybe, which again, places your butt higher. It's all about the aerodynamics when you get in that tuck position down here, but not that tall. I'm still flat-footed. I'm about 6 feet tall, so you're gonna be able to fit on this bike fine. Now, it is sport bike forward. There's something weird about this sport bike forward for me. I find most sport bikes to be relatively uncomfortable for me after a long period. Just the heavy weight on my wrists is just something that I don't want on my everyday bike. This one is still forward, but for whatever reason, it just feels a little bit more comfortable than some. You still definitely have the weight on your wrists. It's a Hayabusa, it is what it is. You have cruise control, so you can kind of take a break with your wrists as you need to, which is nice. But overall, even though it's a long stretch, there's something about it that for me and my body type personally, feels just a little bit more comfortable than some. Now, check that kickstand, make sure it's down. If you look at the bodywork here, you see a little extra bodywork again, covering that engine. And what that does is allows your legs to tuck in here, and it also keeps your legs out of the wind. That's good for aerodynamic efficiency, but it's also good just to keep you a little bit warmer on a cooler day, a little bit more comfortable. And even your hands here are a little bit more behind the bodywork. We'll see all that as we get a little bit closer, but seating position is very good. And like I said, plenty of space for a passenger here, so you can really take somebody on here, have some fun with them as well. They're gonna be tucked in, hold on to you. You wanna make sure they're used to going on motorcycles for sure, because this bike is fun, but it's controllable. We're going to talk about some of that as we dig into the dash. Let's just look at a few little badges, and then we'll dig into the dash and talk about some of the technology features on this bike. So as we take a look at the exhaust here, again, dual exhaust, one on each side here, and these are not small. Hard to sort of show you on camera the size. Again, everything about this bike is big, but there's also a focus on lightweight, and you can kind of see that here as well. We're gonna zoom in a little bit here. You can see that 25th anniversary logo right there in the center. So you do have that on both sides there. And again, as we talk about lightweight, as we look at the engine and stuff as well, even little things like, as they talk about the engine, how it was redesigned for this generation of bike, you know, the pistons themselves are like 26 grams lighter than they used to be, which means any rotating mass, that's the savings you can save in an engine is far more than the savings you can save everywhere else. So while this bike is still large and impressive, there's so many little things that talk about weight savings and other things that actually make a difference. Now, 25th anniversary stuff, I don't know if we can see it on this camera angle. No, maybe not. Yep, there we go. A little bit of gold detailing down in that section there. The chain has some gold on it. We'll just whip to the other side and we'll show you also the main badge that you have on this, which is on the tank. All right, we're filming wide angle here. I got a police car going by as well. Lots of stuff going on in town today. We're gonna zoom in again to the chain, zoom in again to the chain, and you can see that little bit of gold detailing there again. So both sides of the bike, you're gonna see just slight detail there. We're gonna continue to pan across to those Brembo brakes that we can see there. Again, the gold detailing there. So that's all 25th anniversary stuff, but the biggest thing is there's a badge front and center. Let's look at that right now as we head towards the dash. All right, top of the tank again. Tank is large, but again, hard to show on camera how big those side pieces are. So a lot of width to this bike, a lot like a touring bike, but again, it's not. And again, it's all about the aerodynamics. Let's zoom into that 25th anniversary logo. You can see it there. That's what you're gonna see front and center when you're riding the bike. And hopefully this gives you a bit of an idea of your perspective while riding. So I am gonna try to zoom in here. Actually, we're gonna just make a little quick cut so I can get on the right angle to try to get those gauges in there as well. Pretty cool stuff. All right, we just dipped under the windscreen here. What I like about this is for a 25th anniversary bike, it still feels like the original, which I think is kind of cool. You know, we don't do retro bikes the same way that maybe, you know, retro bikes really were. We still add some technology in there, and you have some of that here, but you've got the gold accents here, which show you that it's special. The gold accents around the fuel gauge on the left and temperature gauge on the right. And then you've got a speedometer, which we're gonna zoom into all this stuff right now. As you take a look at the speedometer here, you see it goes basically to 300 kilometers an hour. So again, that little red on the bottom of the speedometer is the only area where it cannot read. Now again, I'm sure the bike's speed limited that, and you can limit the speed of your bike yourself. We'll talk about that as we get going. Let's see if we can see on camera this little bit of glare on the screen. Doesn't show up in real life. Again, Suzuki's typical stuff. When you turn them on, they talk about in the center about the service, so when your next service interval is. Of course, this has 0.1 kilometer, or wait, not even that. That's kilometers per liter. So again, that's trip stuff. So there's your dash. So left side, you've got the fuel gauge. Let's see if I can get in there. Fuel gauge on the left. Tachometer, which runs right up to 11,000 RPM. And then you've got, which is the red line, and 30,000 RPM indicated. And then the speedometer on the right and temperature gauge on the far right. And then in here you have some various controls. So there's traction control, there's all the Suzuki ride management, there's the power and all kinds of things. So let's talk a little bit. Let's just zoom in for a second so you can sort of see what that dash looks like. We're not gonna play with this too much, but we are gonna try to talk about some of the technologies in this. I haven't got great visuals, so let's just get into it right now. All right, on a bike this advanced and this special, I have to use a cheat sheet because I have to get it right. But some of this is kind of interesting the way they word it. So I want to talk about what they call Suzuki Drive Mode Selector Alpha. So basically, some of the controls. Now this does have an up-down quick shifter, so you can just like, you know, clutchless upshift. Once you get into first gear, clutchless upshift, clutchless downshift. Basically, if I have to describe that to you, you probably shouldn't be driving this bike. It has a quick shifter, it's good. It also has things like cruise control, which we talked about earlier. We'll show you the hand controls here, or the controls on the handlebars in a second here. But it's got a number of different things like what they call sort of the power mode settings. So A, B, and C. A is for active or sporty use, B is for general all-around riding, and C is for comfort and touring. So you've got electronics in there that can do exactly what it's designed to do. Pure sport, kind of your normal, and then comfort and touring. Now remember, comfort and touring, you know, it would be like an eco mode on a regular bike. They call it comfort and touring because it is still exceptionally powerful here. There's another thing with the traction control system. The traction control system has 10 different settings that can control wheel spin and that kind of thing. And then there's an anti-lift control system. So that's separate from the traction control in some ways. That also has 10 different settings. So we kind of know how these things work, right? But the anti-lift control, I want to read what it says here because it's kind of interesting. The rider can choose from 10 modes or turn the system off. The higher the setting, the greater the amount of control supplied. When in mode 10, for example, and I'm still reading this, it is virtually impossible to lift the front wheel even with a passenger on the back and the throttle wide open. So the electronics on this is what I really appreciate about the 25th anniversary edition and the current generation of Hayabusa. Is when this bike came out 25 years ago, I remember it, and it was just something that was incredibly intimidating for regular riders. But the electronics on this allow you to take people out. And I remember seeing, you know, people on the back here in wheelies and that kind of thing, and that just scares me. But the idea that you can turn this right down to 10, even with a passenger on the back, where you put the weight backwards, you can go full throttle and you're not gonna wheelie. That's pretty cool. The fact that you can do that, and then having 10 increments of traction control to prevent wheel spin, 10 increments of anti-lift control to control things, allow you to take this bike from whatever you're riding, and you should be riding another bike before this. This is not your first bike, but it allows you to take this bike and gradually work your way into it, and then depending on your riding, gradually work your way into what kind of riding you want to do and that kind of thing. You can also limit your top speed, because as we all know, on a high-powered sport bike, you can find yourself going well beyond top speed. So you can limit your top speed on this electronically to whatever you decide you want it to be at. So if you don't want to go over 120 kilometers an hour, if that's just where you want to sit on the highway, you know, you can accelerate hard and it'll cut you off at that speed, whatever you want to set it to. Cruise control works up to 200 kilometers an hour, so that's, you know, not every cruise control works above things like 140 on some brands of bikes and some other bikes. So you can set that cruise control for faster than the speed limit if you want, and well faster, as fast as you want. So that's kind of a practical thing. But I really appreciate the electronics in this that they've brought in. So you have the classic view, and then the electronics. And that's just a couple examples. If you want to know more, we could do a full tech review of this bike, but I think we're going to go on a little too long for this review. Let's take a look at some of the controls here and work our way through, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this specific bike. All right, let's just quickly start clutch side. Again, this bike is not super light, but they do a whole bunch of things to make it lighter. And you can see my finger hopefully poking through there. Maybe you can't, but a little space through there, which gives, again, a little extra lightness. The other thing I should point out about the clutch lever is you can see this adjustment knob here. There are 4 settings for reach. Now, a reach setting on a clutch lever does a couple things for you. First of all, if you have bigger hands or smaller hands, it can fit you nicely. You can bring it in or out, but it also can change the feel of where the engagement point is. So you can really sort of customize that just through the engagement. I can tell you the clutch is very light, or fairly light. It has a firm, really linear, really good feel to it. So again, you don't have to use the clutch a whole lot other than getting out of first gear, because you have that quick shifter. But if you want to use the clutch, it is a fun, you know, nice clutch to pull. And it has, again, a bit of a sort of a spring-loaded kind of feel to it. It just, I don't know, I kind of like that smoothness of it. Over on the regular controls, just regular type controls. You've got headlights or high beams on, flash to pass right there. You've got your cruise control resume and set right here. Turning it on is on the other handlebar, and your mode button in here to cycle through the different modes in your computer setting there. Signal lights and horn down there. Let's show you the other side just so you have an idea of what's on there, and then we'll zip through. Okay, so throttle side, something you can see and something you can't see in the shot. Again, that same matching lever here for the brake lever. What you have here is typical starts, like the kill switch with the start switch built in. There's your cruise control on, and your hazard warning lights, which I think are nice lights to have on any kind of bike that you might be touring on. What you can't see, and in fact, actually I'm gonna move the camera just so you can see it over here, the brake lever adjustment. So the reason I want to point out the brake lever adjustments is because we mentioned the clutch lever has 4 adjustments. This one has 6, so you can really change the reach here. And again, on an entry-level bike, if you have this, dirt bike going by again. On an entry-level bike, if you have this, it's really just about fitting your hands. On a performance bike, what you have is the ability to place that brake lever exactly where you want it, to have the bite point exactly where you want it. So 6 different adjustments allows a lot of fine detail adjustments in range here to make sure that when you jam on that brake, you have precise control and that it grabs exactly where you want it to grab in that lever pull. And that's just a really important piece. So having both being adjustable just, again, allows you to customize this bike through electronics and through mechanical pieces that allow it to be a perfect fit for your style riding, so you are completely comfortable having the performance you need at your fingertips exactly where you want. And that's one of the things that's cool about this bike. So I always kind of wrap up these videos by talking about who this bike is for, and this one is a little bit unique. Obviously, this is for an experienced rider, someone who knows what they're getting. Probably a little bit older rider who has some memories of the Hayabusa, like me, who has some memories of when the Hayabusa first came out. What I like about this particular version is a couple things. On this generation of bike, you've got the electronics that take the Hayabusa and allow you to be a competent rider and work your way up and learn on it. You don't have to start on a race bike and then be ready for this. You can now go from a high-powered motorcycle where you're used to having great acceleration, wheelies are available to you, and move into this and really appreciate that power, but you can dial it back to control it just for the weather conditions, just for your mood, just for the roads you're on, or just as you're learning to get used to from your sport bike to your Hayabusa. This is not a corner carving machine on a racetrack, but my argument would be this is a great corner carving machine on the road because you don't have those extremely tight corners on a road like on a country road. So you can drive this through town. I don't think it's super fun through town. I think there's better through town bikes. But once you get onto the country roads and highways, you know, there's no corners that are so sharp that this isn't the right bike for it. It's gonna feel great. It's got great tires. It's got a great, balance to it. It's got great suspension, which we barely even talked about on this bike. So it's a great bike to ride on those kinds of rides. Now, you have to commit to the sporting riding position, but there's something about this, at least for me, that makes this sporting riding position really, really good. But when we talk about who this bike is for, this is one of 25 in the country. This is a collector's bike. You buy this bike and you have the 25th anniversary, the latest and greatest Hayabusa stuff, so absolutely you can ride it. But this one is unique and this one is special. And if you're gonna buy a Hayabusa, you can go get one inside. This is the 2023 edition. It's black, it looks cool, it's probably a hair cheaper than this one, and that's great. But if you are planning to keep this bike for a while, if you think this bike is special and not just your daily rider, but something that's special that you want to keep in great condition, enjoy it on the road, but also baby it and look at it in your garage, the 25th anniversary is the one to go. And my guess is if you buy this one, you'll probably be one of the first ones in Canada to have the 25th anniversary edition. You may be able to, we may be able to get some from Suzuki. We'll talk to the McLean's guys and say, hey, can we be the first ones to take possession of this? Maybe that could be you. I don't know, but that'd be kind of cool if it was. This bike is special. I absolutely love this bike. In theory, it has always intimidated me in practicality, but the electronics bring it to be something that I could ride and probably you could ride. So if you have questions that you want me to answer about this bike, let me know in the comments below because, like I said, I can come back to this bike, and if I can't hit the anniversary edition, I can hit some of the other ones, the other one inside, and there'll be more around here as well. And I'll make sure that we continue to come back and answer all the questions that you want to know, because this thing's pretty cool and pretty special. So thanks everybody for watching. If you want to see this bike, McLean Sports here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, just click on their website, links in the description. They can hook you up. Yeah, this one's cool. Thanks everybody for watching.